Good afternoon, everyone. Let me introduce you to our next speaker, Kyle Dean Houston. Kyle is the author of Patchwork Junkie, a speaker and a coach committed to showing everyone that their best life is still within reach. Kyle's unbelievable life story exemplifies the tenacity of human will. After walking out of prison at 35 with no college degree, no network, and never having sent an email, he has built a highly successful career as a sales executive in Silicon Valley. In less than a decade, he went from earning minimum wage to being the vice president in a $2 billion funded publicly traded company. The title of Kyle's talk is Risk the Competitive Advantage. If everyone can please give a round of applause for Kyle.
Thank you. Is this on? There we go. Appreciate it. She just told my whole speech. Right there, it's over. So I think we're gonna do something a little bit different than some of the speakers I poked my head in and saw today. I think we're gonna have some fun on this one. So what I like to talk about is I talk about startup. So what is a startup? To some of you guys in this room, it's not gonna be anything more than a dream. It's going to be that hypothetical scenario that seems to make sense of all your unchecked ambitions. It is an unpolished vision that seems to get formed through the vision of instant gratification and the battle cry of someday. But I want to be really clear, startup's not about someday. Startup's about now. Startup's about action. If anybody in this room likes to procrastinate, don't get into startup. If you're one of those people that likes to analyze things to the nth degree, don't get into startup. If you've been indoctrinated through TikTok and all those glorious stories of success, don't get into startup. If you like to take pictures in front of Lambos and you like to spend your nights at the clubs, do yourselves a favor and don't get into startup, because startup is scary. Startup is sacrifice. Like sleeping on someone's couch and working in a basement and hoping to God you're wearing ripped up clothes that you go to exit someday so you can buy something else. And for that reason alone, most of the people in this room are going to do lots of things other than start a business and start on yourself, or bet on yourself. Because startup, to the people that bet on themselves, is like walking out on a high wire, scared to death of heights with no safety net in sight. It goes against everything that is inside you to keep you safe. And in case nobody tells you this week, that is what startup is. It is the struggle to cross the chasm. It is launching products before they're earlier. It's trying to maintain that small piece of integrity as you massage data one more time, looking for that next round of funding. It is hijacked vacations. It is asking too much of your significant other. It is trenches and carnage. It is addiction, it is trauma, it is high blood pressure. And if you can keep your crap in one bag long enough, guys, I promise it is the best professional experience you are ever gonna have. To some of us, it is the only thing that is going to make sense. I am so sorry, I keep walking off camera and I keep screwing that up and tripping off this thing. Let's move this over just a bit. To some of us, it is the only thing that is ever going to make sense of what life has polished us to be. Rule breakers, risk takers, people of action, because action is the thing that I promise you is going to separate the wheat from the chaff. It is that distinct line that is drawn in the sand that on one side, you are going to find a vast group of people who will never experience the spoils of their biggest lives. And on the other side, I'm hoping it might be some of you guys. There is a poetic element to being in an early stage venture where it is all for one and one for all if you're with the right people. It is communing with the divinity within. It is creativity in its purest form. It is that singular compulsion to bring something into the world that it has never seen before. It is music, it is art, it is a drug, it is a testament of one's will. It is a three-dimensional manifestation of the human spirit, because you live on the hill and you die on the hill every single day. It is trenches and carnage. It is prayers and meditation. It is being alone most of the time, trying desperately to rope in those pieces of you that are so diffuse from the daily demands that you don't see any end in sight. And guys, I wouldn't have it any other way. Because standing before you today, right now, is a man who knows he's already had one of his greatest moments. A rare moment where very intelligent people cobbled together their talents, lived in the trenches, and rose to the siren song of higher ideals. Because to us, in that moment, this was bigger than just a capitalistic endeavor. It was a revolution. It was our chance to give to the world. It was our chance to usher in change. And even at the moment that we were doing it, we felt lucky to be in that moment. Most people in this room, most people in the world are never going to know what it's like to go from cocktail napkin idea to exit. And if you ever do, I promise you will be part of the elite. And that is what startup is to me. So for those people who want to bring ideas into the world, I want you to know that you must first respect the shoulders that you stand on. People who bit the bullet and ushered in this world, this new world where entrepreneurship is now a badge of pride. Because this is the toughest game you're ever going to play. I know a lot of people don't talk about this side of it all, but this is the toughest game you will ever play. But if you're cut from the same cloth I am, it is the only thing that will make sense. And that is what startup is to me. Now, in the next hour, I am going to talk about startup and success from a grassroots point of view. It's a little different than what you're going to hear this week, right? This is not the sexy stuff. This is the usable stuff, because if you guys want to know what's sexy about startup, it's winning. Cheerleading and pats on the back don't cut it for the real entrepreneur, right? The real entrepreneur is on a mission to manifest a vision. So when I was asked to come into this room, when I was told that I was going to get to speak in front of you guys, I thought long and hard. What are the stories that I can pull from that are going to make the biggest impact to all these young, impressionable minds? So brace yourselves, because what I'm going to talk about comes from what I call bare knuckle wisdom. Because entrepreneurship, if it's nothing else, it is a microcosm of the human condition. So if you guys want to take this a little bit further, not that the introduction wasn't fantastic. Where did she go? Let me go a little bit deeper. So like she said, my name is Kyle Houston, right? And these days, I'm a speaker. I'm a best-selling author. And I am, on certain occasions, I'm a coach. I'm also a loving husband to my partner in crime back there in the corner, who does not like attention, and a doting father to my two baby girls, McKenna and Harper. For almost 13 years before that, my entire identity was wrapped around being a high-performing sales executive out in San Francisco. Out in the land of startup and venture capital money, I was known as the guy who could parachute in the middle of resource-constrained organizations and create a hockey stick in the revenue plan. And although my peers, if you want to call them that, were former executives of Cisco, Nortel, Logitech, GE, the list goes on and on and on. That is not my calling card. You see, out there, I was known as the guy that could get things done, a guy in the trenches, and it's a very valuable piece on the chessboard. Early stage ventures were the game I played, and it is a game with no breaks, no timeouts, and a changing strategy with every single sale. It's crazy. It takes a special kind of masochism to get good at that. These were the companies that were somewhere between early adopters and the early majority. And I promise you, it is not an easy game to play. To give you an idea of the type of game we were playing, on the top of every one of my doors, in every one of my offices, was that saying by Mario Andretti. I'm sure a lot of you have heard of it. It's the one that says, if everything feels like it's under control, you're just not moving fast enough. And not only did that exemplify the cultures that we were building out there, it also exemplifies what kind of a sales leader I was. Now, some of you know a little bit about my story. I don't know if anybody did any research leading up to this, but to put it in a nutshell, I am a man with a unique comeback story. You see, I didn't show up to my career until I was 35 years old. And it's not because I was doing something really cool like get my MBA from Penn State. I wish it was. No, I showed up a scared ex-convict, determined to hide my story from everybody, frightened to death that the world didn't hold a place for me. That's right, before I met my wife, before I was a doting husband, before I was a formidable, fast growth leader, I was walking out of 7 years of some of the most violent situations you can ever imagine. So the truth is, walking out of 7 years sounds like a lot of time for you guys, but I literally felt lucky to have only got 7, because standing before you right now is a guy that, I so hope this isn't obvious, but a guy that faced not just 1 life in prison, but 2 life sentences. But let's not get this twisted. I didn't accidentally Forrest Gump my way into some sort of a cushy sales job, right? I had to become a student of the game. I had to hide this secret with my life, and I had to run through brick walls to get my shot at corporate America. And in that time, I was part of multiple acquisitions. I was a big player in some pretty big patent infringement lawsuits, and I put 2 organizations on the list of the fastest growing companies in America. So by no means was I at a beginner level. Grabbing market share out of thin air, penetrating risk-averse markets, and talking billion-dollar OEMs into trusting you, that somebody that they'd never heard, it takes a very special skill set. So let me make a promise to everyone in this room. My philosophies on success, entrepreneurship, startup, don't come from somebody that read books in grandma's basement. No, this comes from earned wisdom. And if you're looking for any reason to put stock in what I've got to tell you today, it's this. The most valuable lessons you're ever going to learn are not going to come from the classroom. The most worthy professor that you're ever going to meet is adversity. It's like Mike Tyson said, everybody's got a game plan until you get hit in the mouth. And from my experience, guys, that's when the real education starts. So just in case it's not obvious yet, I've been hit in the mouth. Now, over the years, I've thought seriously about why people don't become successful. Give me 1 second here. All of these observations come from real world experience and thousands of conversations, and I'm not kidding. Thousands from people that are in the game, deeply entrenched, and people that are still sitting on the sidelines. Undeniably, the number one reason people don't become successful has nothing to do with their brilliance, nothing to do with their talents, their skills, their education. It has nothing to do with the market or who's in office or how big everything is, how big the market is, right? Hands down, the reason people don't become successful is fear of failure. And it's brilliant how the mind paints these vivid images of the worst failures you're ever going to stumble into. But what if everybody in this room understood? What if you, forget everybody in the room, what if you understood that none of that's real? And I'm not talking intellectually, I'm talking viscerally. And I can hear some of you right now say, yeah, Kyle, we've heard this before. But there is that thing called the real world where there's real failure. So what makes your failure? What makes your education on failure different? So let me tell you what I know about failure. When I was 27 years old, I got arrested. Now, I don't know what arrested means to the people in this room, but I'm not talking about a DUI or a small possession charge. I'm talking about the biggest drug bust in Lafayette County history. And to put this in perspective, this was the mid-90s. This was a suburb, just outside a suburb of Kansas City called Independence, Missouri. And just in case there's some historians in this room, Independence was named the meth capital of the world by Rolling Stone magazine. And there I was, right smack dab in the middle of it at 27. The drugs, the money, the consequences. Now, to add another footnote to this, if we would have rewound 2 years from that night, we would have found an up-and-coming entrepreneur with a distributorship in Kansas City. Just 24 months earlier, you would have seen that I was a relatively naive young man well on his way to living a successful life. Now, on this night, I was caught, I was wanted by the state and federal authorities, and I'd been eluding them for 6 months as if it was all a game. But I'm going to tell you right now, real world failure on this night was about to put a chokehold on me. I remember the oversized German Shepherd that was tethered to a leash just feet from my face, barking and snarling like some rabid dog with the taste of blood in its mouth. I remember the cold gravel underneath me as I sat there cuffed, shaking my head with the patrol lights in my eyes and the excitement in the voices of the officers as they pulled money and drugs and chemicals out of the car. And on that night, I wasn't worried about the time I was doing, not yet. I wasn't worried about what I was facing. I wasn't worried about what angry men do to one another behind bars. What I was worried about is what most of you would have been thinking about, and that is, what have I done to my mother? 50 pounds underweight, track marks running up and down my arms, and I was slowly coming to the conclusion that all of this was going to be a hell of a lot more permanent than what I ever imagined. Now listen, I had an exit strategy, right? I had a really good one. I was either going to have an overdose or I was going to commit suicide, but I wasn't getting caught. But life, God, the universe, whatever you guys want to call it, had a whole nother plan for me. And I was about to discover a lot about myself, more than I ever wanted to, in an environment that was built brick by brick to bring out the worst in an individual. I remember the first night alone in a detox cell, listening to sounds I'd never heard before. Keys, locks, doors, screams. And I remember bowing my head and saying to nobody that I was sorry, to whoever could listen, because I never meant to make it out of this one alive. Hours turned into weeks. Weeks turned into months, and I found myself in a situation that was going to test everything that I ever knew about inner strength and resilience. I thought I understood survival. I thought I understood grit. I thought that I could imagine the worst thing that could ever happen to me. But what I thought I knew over the last 27 years was about to crumble like a house of cards. For 12 months of my life, I was in solitary confinement. For 12 months of my life, every day, I was alone with me and my thoughts and God. My toilet, which was an indignity that you seemed to get used to, was always just feet from where I slept and where I ate lunch or breakfast, lunch, and dinner. And my mattress was this thin, worn, my entire bed was this thin, worn mattress that was the only thing that separated me from a cold metal slab. And I promise you, if you can walk a groove in a concrete floor, I would have done it, because I guarantee I walked thousands of miles back and forth in this claustrophobic 5x8 cell. This is the worst thing I have to say. It's important to tell you guys that I was a junkie. That is one of the most uncomfortable things to tell a room full of strangers, but I was. Not only that, I was the source on the streets, which is the equivalent of an opiate addict having full reign of an assembly line in a pharmaceutical plant and ingesting handfuls. That was the mindset, that was the body that was caged inside this cell. Now let me tell you a little bit about my interior world. Try to imagine what it's like to be scared and alone in an environment that you could never have imagined before. Try to imagine what it's like to have your own mother, a woman who has kissed every one of your bruises and your scrapes, who's been to every one of your sporting events, who's gotten behind all your stupid ideas, now isn't willing to come see you. Try to imagine what it's like to come to the realization that you've burned every bridge in your life and that there's nobody coming to save you. You're coming down off copious amounts of drugs, and that all of this is going to be permanent. Now, add the paralyzing fear of doing the next 30 years of your life with no parole in cells just like this one. Every waking moment of my life, I was trying to wrap my mind around the surreal idea of doing the next 3 decades in the most violent situations you guys can imagine, that I could imagine. Not only was I scared of the clear and present danger of the criminal element, I was more scared that I was going to be forgotten. In my mind, I was never going to get to be significant. I was never going to get to contribute. I was never going to fall in love. And I was never going to get to hear the sound of my kids laughing around Christmas trees again. At best, I was walking out of prison 30 years from that point, almost 60 years old, and anybody that loved me or knew me would have forgotten about me or would have died. Nobody was coming to save me. It felt like nobody loved me, and when you're in prison, nobody cares about your feelings. Please, God, man, I would pray every night, please let me get one more conversation with my mother. Let me tell her that I'm still her baby boy, that I still love her, that I never meant this to happen. God, if that can't happen, just don't let all my talent and my skills die behind razor wire and cinder blocks. The prayer that I was throwing out to the universe absolutely felt like it was over. But fate has a way of throwing you a bone. Just about a month before I got sentenced, my lawyer deposed the police officer that pulled us over, and it turns out he had no business pulling us over. Everything that they had in the car was insubmissible. I could beat the case. Now, the challenge was, if I lose, I get every day of the 30 years. So I took a 9-year sentence. I'm going to speed this up for you guys. Took a 9-year sentence, went off to do my time, and felt like I had dodged an existential bullet like you wouldn't believe. And this is where the story gets tragic. About a couple months before I was eligible for parole, the federal government comes in and decides I didn't do enough time. And they cherry-picked me out of the state penitentiary, shipped me off to Leavenworth, which is one of the most violent holding facilities in the country, where I faced another 2 years of my life thinking I was going to do a life sentence. Once again, it felt like everything was over. Now, spoiler alert, I didn't do the life sentence. I'm right here in front of you guys. But it doesn't matter how much time you do, the system has a way of stealing your light. For 7 years of my life, I watched myself get older. For 7 years of my life, I watched my son go from 6 years old to 13, and I watched my dad die of cancer. And for 4 of those years, I thought I was never getting out. So now let's go back to the point. When I talk about real world failure, I'm not talking about a bad grade or a bad investment. I'm talking about something that's unfathomable to most people in this world, and it should be. Which brings me to success principle number 1. It doesn't matter how far you fall. You can always pick yourself back up. I was 35 years old, no college degree, and a 10-year work history gap, and I was entering the workforce. Between the years of 1997, which I'm sure sounds like dinosaurs to you guys, but between 1997 and 2005, not only was the world not slowing down, but it felt like it sped up. When I went in, there was no dot-com bubble. When I got out, everybody was communicating through this thing called the internet. Cell phones took the place of beepers, and Napster disrupted an entire industry that I thought would never get disrupted. The entire world felt like it was running on rocket fuel, and I was riding in on horse and buggy like an Amish roofer. Now, I had to try to imagine, just for a second, try to imagine what it's like to have all this pent-up ambition. Try to imagine, just for a second, I might be intelligent, I have all this pent-up ambition, and when I do an inventory on what my options are, I come up with very little. I had to become vigilant if I was going to see my opportunities. I had to suck it up if I was going to find my real potential. I had to grow a strong aversion to comfort. It was either that or I was going to become a statistic. Even worse, I could become a salty individual that knew he had given up everything in his life to a white powder and a needle. Not me, baby. No way. I was going to live up to my potential. So I screwed up. I mean, by anybody's imagination, I really screwed up. But in that moment, just like every moment you have, you've got a decision. You can either lean into greatness or it's checkmate. Right? It's just like, if you've seen Shawshank Redemption, you guys remember Morgan Freeman's character, and when he would say, you can either get busy living or you can get busy dying. So I saw my window of opportunity. I cleverly disguised myself as a sales professional, and I went out and I quickly sold $70 million in early stage technology. I was a sponge by day. I was a tireless researcher by night. I would volunteer for every single meeting I could get my hands on, and I would go out into the wild and I would figure out who knew what they were talking about and who was full of stuff. By the time I reared my head, by the time I pulled the ripcord on my career, I was a vice president inside a $2 billion publicly traded company. 10 years keeping my head down. 10 years with my head on a swivel, 10 years too scared to do anything short of kill it. So let me be very clear. I know what it's like to be alone. I know what it's like to feel like you're not enough. I know what it's like to be so damn ashamed of your life that you don't want to meet another person and you feel like the world's going to be a better place without you in it. I know what it's like to have the entire world count you out and not listen to it and step back up and figure out a way to win. So when I say it doesn't matter how far you fall, it's real. And don't think this story's just for people that have screwed up. Like if you're sitting out there right now saying, Kyle, that's a cool story. I think I'll hang on to it if I'm facing a life sentence, then you're just not listening. This story belongs to the people, maybe some of you, that are sitting on the fence, paralyzed by fear. This story belongs more to the people that don't make mistakes because you don't do anything. Guys, if it's true that it doesn't matter how far you fall and you really believe that, like it's really etched in your soul, then what's going to stop you from doing more? If you want to know the most useful exercise an aspiring entrepreneur could ever go through, it is to obtain the mindset that failure is an illusion. How formidable would that be? How bulletproof, how gangster would it be to walk through life with that mindset? And for anybody in here that's wondering how you get that mindset, let me drop a little knowledge. Go out and screw up. That's it. Go out, try new things, find yourself in tough positions, and then cowboy up and get right back up on the saddle. The more you do that, the more you reinforce the truth, and that is that life doesn't come to an end. Better yet, you get to see deeper into the matrix. You get to find out why greatness is always hidden. You get to find out what risk really means. You get to find out that on the other side of fear is where you really want to be, and the only way to get to it is to go through it. And when you get there, guys, I promise you will be a formidable entrepreneur. Now, the iconic vision of me of startup, let's go there. For me, not for everybody, are those black and white photos of young men with disheveled hair and wrinkled clothes, all sitting around oscilloscopes and soldering irons, smiling like they don't have a care in the world. And that's what I love. That's what attracted me to San Francisco, right? It's especially when it's some snapshot of a crackpot team from Apple or one of the usual suspects out of Palo Alto. Because in hindsight, we all know how those stories behind those pictures work out, right? We know that those are the people that not only change American culture, not only change their lives, but they change human existence forever. And the real mystery to me, when I look at the Steve Jobs and Wozniak photos, is how much of that destiny did Steve Jobs know? In 2007, I got my chance. Somebody allowed me to go from St. Petersburg to San Francisco, and I got to haul everything I owned in a small U-Haul trailer. I remember my first Bay Area experience was, this is before Airbnb, so remember this, but my first Bay Area experience was subletting a one-bedroom apartment just a block from the Fillmore from this bona fide hippie that I still haven't met to this day. I remember the first time I saw the sights of the city with the oversized billboards and the skyline and the history. You got to keep in mind, this is 2 years after walking out of prison for me, right? This is 2 years after thinking that that environment was going to be where I stayed for the rest of my life. And now I was in this city that had been the muse of so many artists and singers and poets and authors, and now I knew why. And for the first time in at least 10 years, I caught myself believing in my future. This was the cusp of my big break back then. I'd just been hired by this really unique startup company that for some reason thought that I had been in management experience for my career, that I had inlays into the market that they wanted to penetrate, and that I'd been in sales for a really long time. Now, how they got that impression doesn't really matter. That's what they thought. But as I watched the Bay Bridge get blanketed with fog for the very first time, I knew two things, and two things only. One, that the next episode was going to have everything to do with the way the rest of my life played out. And two, I was in way over my head. This was my crash course in what early stage looks like after the first round of funding. This is where everybody's friends and family get hired for executive positions that they're not qualified for. It's where drones of people come in to manage functions of a business that you don't need. It is the cart before the horse. It is all day conversations at water coolers about how the software is going to manage the verticals. It is no work, no quota, no market, and no money. And I thought we were going to shut our doors down in the first week. That is what my experience was after the first round of funding. But I had a knowledge gap that I needed to fill, and I needed to fill it quick. So to me, this experience was my shot, my training, my salvation. Surrounded by long-winded CEOs and PhDs, I knew that the secret to my success was going to come down to 4 very specific key performance indicators. 1, how good I got at hiding my secret from everybody. 2, how quickly I could absorb and assimilate all the missing information. 3, how much more I could outperform everybody in my environment. And 4, and I want you to hear this right, how good I got at leaning into fear. I went to lunch with anybody and everybody, and I would shut up and I would listen. Listening became questions, questions became answers, answers became insights, and before you knew it, I had the corner office right next to the CEO. Now people are calling meetings to listen to me. Now people are reporting to me, and when they gave me my first executive role, I took that company from 1.5 million to 14.1. We were on the map. On the list of the fastest growing companies in America, we were number 4 in energy. Better yet, I started to build a network. People started to trust that I was a guy that could get things done. And in the land of stupidly large valuations, the guy that could get things done is in very short supply. I leapfrogged from that startup to the next one, and I grabbed all the responsibility I could. This one had legs. Together, me and this team, we built a new standard in the industry, the hockey stick in the revenue plan, and we took this one to exit. And when the smoke cleared, I was the vice president of a substantially large organization. I was a rock star in a company that never would have let me come through the front door and apply for a job. So when people ask me, Kyle, how did you go from scared ex-convict to such a lofty position? I tell them it was easy. All I had to do was study everybody's failures, find a company that would give me the reins, take said company from pre-revenue to $30 million, help sell the company and get grandfathered in. As easy as that. Lucky for me, startup is leveling the playing field where you can screw up your entire life, make mistake after mistake, and if you show up in the right way, you can be a winner. But here's a caveat for all the geniuses in the room. Having the best technology doesn't guarantee you win. That's rookie thinking. Don't get caught up in how profound your business model is or how big the market is or how clever you sound in front of VCs. None of that stuff matters on the field. From my experience on the field, it all boils down to the same things that I used. Every entrepreneur is hiding something. Every entrepreneur is afraid they don't know enough. Every entrepreneur is driven by fear and insecurity just as much as talent and skill set. So if you want to find success as an entrepreneur, if you want to go from cocktail napkin idea to the, it's going to come down to the same KPIs that I used. how quickly you absorb and assimilate all the missing information, how much more you consistently outperform everyone in your environment, and how good you get leaning into fear. Dictionary.com defines entrepreneurial as of or pertaining to a business endeavor, especially one that has considerable and personal risk and initiative. And from my experience, Dictionary.com absolutely got it right. Which brings me to success principle number 2. Success doesn't care what you think you're entitled to. The tuition we pay, just a second. The tuition you're going to pay as an entrepreneur is swallowed pride, sleepless nights, and failure. This is the toughest game you are ever going to play. And if you don't have the stomach for failure, you shouldn't have the appetite for success. For those of you in this room who want to bet on yourself, etch what I'm about to say in your mind. The most fundamental truth about success is it simply doesn't care. You guys have a high IQ? Success doesn't care. You guys have some talent? Success doesn't care. You guys have you got people in your network that's going to allow you to raise funds? Success doesn't care. That's right. No matter what you think you're entitled to, no matter what your educational level merits for a living, no matter what your parents do, what prep school you went to, or how many times you've read Think and Grow Rich, success doesn't care. Success doesn't care that you have faith. Success doesn't care that you have a calling. Success doesn't care that you might be the second coming of Jesus Christ. Success just sits around to see how well you manage fear and adversity. Greatness is a consensual agreement between you and all your greatest fears. It is action and constant movement in spite of the great excuses. It is a relationship that only you can forge that gives permission to all your opportunities to reveal themselves. Success didn't care that I was out on the playing field or working late at night. Success didn't care that I was coming into San Francisco late on BART's and that my wife had to put a plate on the counter and go to bed without me every night. I gave up every spare moment and chose long days because I wanted success. Success was me. But success has a very short-term memory. Success doesn't know what you did yesterday. It barely knows what you did 5 minutes ago. Success simply sits around to see how well you operate in the here and now. But there's salvation in its nature. Lucky for me, success is as indifferent as the laws of physics. Although success doesn't care how hard your mistakes make it, it also doesn't hold it against you. You guys fail a midterm and now your GPA sucks, get over it. Success is still out there. You guys tried to be an entrepreneur a dozen times and it never worked, get over it. Success is still out there. Bet the farm on your life savings and now you're heading back to the starting line, get over it. Success is still out there. Simply put, success is a blank slate that asks one question and one question only, and that is, what have you done for me lately? As you take action, the world will react. And as you push through, the world reacts. As you guys fall down and get back up, as you fail and still show up, the world reacts. As you climb and claw and scrape, the world's going to hear your heart and it's going to say, wait a minute, this one might just make it. But if you don't take action, when opportunity knocks, it's going to find somebody else. Whatever opportunity wants to bring into this world will be brought into the world. And if it's not you, it's going to be somebody like me. Somebody that doesn't get duped by a little hard work and a little bit of fear. Because to the trained eye, success looks a hell of a lot like practice. Success looks like sucking at something until you get good at it. Success looks like going to bed tired and waking up sore. Les Brown said, everybody in the world is self-made. But it's only the successful ones that want to admit it. What's that say to you guys? I'll tell you what it says to me. It says, if I don't like where I'm at, it's my fault. Guys, step up. hear the calling, face your fear. That is what success cares about. Which brings me to my favorite topic about entrepreneurship, which is the competitive advantage. Guys, one of these days, some of you in this room are going to be at the helm of a scrappy, resource-constrained organization trying to break into the market. If you want to find success, you better get really good at sifting through the noise and figuring out what you're good at. Pushing sand uphill, herding cats, and constantly reevaluating that internal SWOT analysis is the bane of the early stage venture. But here's some advice on this topic. Strong advice. Your skills and your talents are not your competitive advantage. Knowing everything that you can about net present value and EBITDA and how to calculate a Silicon Valley valuation is not the competitive advantage. Getting good grades is not the competitive advantage. And I know what you've all been told. Go to a good school, do the best you can. You will always have a leg up on the competition. Don't let this hurt your feelings, but as special as you think you are, and I'm not suggesting you're not, there are lots of special people that are in startup. Being special alone doesn't make you a game changer. That is just the pylons that box in the end zone. Football games are not won by information alone, by watching films. They're won on Sundays when you're in the trenches and you get hit in the mouth and you find that extra thing to get back up and go for more. Those are the people that change the game. If you want to know the number one attribute of successful startups or successful people in general, it is the ability to face your fear and take action. Without action, nothing gets done. Without action, we're just testing theory in a controlled environment. If you want to move out of the laboratory, you're going to have to take risk. It's that thing that everybody's running away from. What are you going to do if you're in a business and your significant other says, I'm tired of the sacrifice? What are you going to do when you're barely making ends meet and your buddies from college are making high six figures? What are you going to do when your uncle says, I love the gumption, I love the amount of work you're putting in, come work for me at the CPA firm, I'll pay you $300,000 a year? Is that when you give up? Or do you continue to bet on yourself? Do you continue to go down the path of the only thing you're ever going to be able to control? Becoming an entrepreneur is a risk. It's a huge risk. It's one of the biggest risks you are ever going to take. But know this, we don't have a shortage of dreamers in this world. We don't have a shortage of ideas. We don't have a shortage of passion. And we damn sure don't have a shortage of talk. What we have a shortage of are people that bet on themselves and take action. Which brings me to success principle number 3. Risk is the only competitive advantage out there. Risk. It's such a filthy 4-letter word, right? It ranks right up there with stupidity, immaturity, rookie thinking. I mean, one thing's for sure, we don't see Fortune 50 COOs betting the farm, risking their market share on the off chance that they might change the game. That's not the way it works. I mean, one thing's for sure, the shareholders would have their head on a spit, and they'd be right. Guys, there's decorum in this world. That's not the way it works. There's process, there's entire departments that are set up to mitigate risk. Risk is for fools and small-time thinkers. It is not what you do when you're a slow-moving tycoon trying to protect market share. But tell that to Elon Musk. Tell that to Steve Jobs or Eric Yuan or Chris Gardner or Richard Branson, all people who at one time stuck their neck out and not only changed their lives, but changed the game forever. Guys, these are household names now who at one time wrestled with that same voice that said, don't do it, stay put, you're going to lose everything, but that's why it's risk. If it was easy, everybody would do it. Guys, we've all heard it, the greater the risk, the greater reward. And don't get it twisted. Risk isn't frivolous. Risk isn't small-time thinking. If risk is anything at all, risk is advanced training. Risk is pure courage. Risk is knowing that you could lose everything, head right back to the starting line, broke, destitute, thumb in the air, hitching down the boulevard of broken dreams. And that was easy for me to say. And believe it or not, that's the competitive advantage. Doing the really scary things that most people aren't willing to do, armed with one feeling. And that is that if you don't do it now, you're going to regret this for the rest of your life. If it's true that successful people are the ones that do what most people aren't willing to do, then it stands to reason that leaning into fear like a savage and taking risk has to be the line drawn in the sand. Where on one side, you're going to see the people that live life on their own terms, and on the other side, you're going to see the people that work for them. Fear is always going to be a part of your lives, especially if you're an entrepreneur. You guys in this room get to decide how much it plays into the next step. I get so tired of hearing people tell me they did the best they could with what they were given. Did you? Did you really? Complacent people say they did the best they could. People that will never see their greatness, not the real entrepreneur. They want to know what they could have done better. They want to know how this could be different. Because somewhere between grateful and never being satisfied is where true success will always live. Listen, I know it's hard. I know you're going to look in the mirror one of these days and all you're going to see is fear. There's going to be times in your life where the people who you love the most are going to tell you life wasn't meant to be this hard. You guys don't put in this kind of work. There's going to be times where you want to throw in the towel, but when you get to those moments, when the weight of the world is on your shoulders, I want you guys to stop and think of the guy that stood up in front of you today and talked about risk. Think about me sitting in a cell 24 hours a day. Think about the pit in my stomach when I thought it was over. Think about me praying to God to get one more chance to make my mark, and then pick yourselves back up and figure out what needs to be done. Tell yourself it's all temporary, because in your darkest moment, you're not going to have to find the solution. All you have to find in your darkest moment is the courage to take the next step. Put one foot in front of the other and tell yourself, this too shall pass. Get it in your head that you chose all this. You chose it because it's different, because it's difficult, and because it's going to show you who you really are. Who you really are. The speed of success is directly proportional to how quickly you take risk and take action. Action builds momentum, momentum builds confidence, and confidence crushes fear. Make risk a part of your daily diet, and again, you will be a formidable entrepreneur. So to everybody in this room who's been bitten by the bug of startup, let me just tell you this. It is true that the wealthiest men on the planet have gotten there through startup. Jeff Bezos, Bill Gates, Mark Cuban, the list goes on and on and on. But don't forget that there was failure, there was despair, there was a crap ton of work. That's why no great startup company, and this is important for me to make this point, no great startup company was ever founded solely based on revenue alone, not in the beginning. It was based on inspiration and passion and this vision that nobody else saw. And guys, if the universe has bestowed you with any of those attributes, stop thinking you have a choice. Do what you were called to do. Either that or it's going to be the albatross around your neck. Do what you're driven to do in spite of some imaginary scoreboard. Trust your gut. Follow your instincts. Bet on yourself with no regrets. We are 8 billion people on this planet scared to death of one another. 8 billion stories that are being written every second of the day. They're going to shape the future. They're shaping the present. What's your story going to look like? Is it going to look like how you took a nice job and navigated office politics for 20 years, or is it going to be an adventure where you guys burn the boats and storm the castle? Because if you want to step into this world, if you want to become the founder of the nextbigthing.com, you got to get really good at setting aside doubt and trusting your instincts and not the world's. Because the world is always going to come at you, and it's going to challenge that nice little image that you created when you were in the warm confines of your comfy little dream world. You're going to get fed statistics and anecdotes and costly mistakes. Doubt is going to look like realism and better judgment. If you don't put the blinders on, your life, your interior life is going to be nothing short of hell. And just at the moment when life's got you up against the ropes, it's going to come bearing to solution with the easy way out. Taking a $200,000 a year job is not greatness. Following a career path because it aligns with all your multiple degrees is not greatness. Guys, paying the bills, saving for retirement, barbecues on the weekends is not greatness. It is the easy way out. Greatness is that thing that's kicking and beating to get out of your chest. Greatness is stepping off the ledge and building the plane on the way down. Greatness is stepping into the octagon with a torn ACL. It is messy, it is rare, and it is nothing but glorious to watch. And look, I'm not saying you have to be a savage. I'm just saying if you want to catch a glimpse of who you really are, of your true greatness, you better have some savage in you. Know that. Startup is an outlet for your greatness, not the other way around. If the first one doesn't succeed, and a lot of them don't you dare give up on being an entrepreneur. Don't stop dreaming. Don't stop planning. Don't stop taking action. If the first one doesn't do well, don't look at it as failure. Look at it as not big enough for your greatness. Greatness is an equal opportunity employer. All you have to do is hear the calling and show up. Not with your hands out, but with your heels dug in. If anybody in this room aspires to greatness, make sure that you don't budge. Dig your feet in, widen your base, and dare the world to hit you with its best shot. I'm not talking to everyone in this room. I know that. I'm only talking to the entrepreneurs, the rule breakers, the risk takers, the people who are inspired and ready. You are the ones who should be asking yourself in every moment, how do I make my mark? Because if I'm gonna sit up here and I'm gonna tell you that it's never too late, that you can't fall too far, that you're not too old, then the opposite has to be true. You guys are not too young to make a difference. You are not too young to change the world. You are not too young to start today. When you stand at the ledge and you're faced with fear, are you going to shrink or are you going to expand? Because playing small serves absolutely nobody. Not you, not me, not everybody out there that needs to see greatness brought into this world. Life was meant for so much more than the courage to take all these tragic events and just push them down. Take stock in what I'm telling you. Your success means something. Don't let your gift die because you're worried about what some people in this room might think. Don't dumb yourself down or shrink to fit because you're afraid you might lose a few loved ones. Stop binge watching. All these people out there live amazing lives and go out and make your mark, because every once in a while, one of us slips through the cracks and has the audacity to do something amazing and bold. Guys, now more than ever, the world needs to see greatness, period. The world needs those people that had a seed, a calling, a purpose that was planted long ago. Those are the people that need to hear my voice right now. Those are the people that need to take back their power. Those are the people that need to chase down those dreams and hear that calling. And just in case a little fear and anxiety is making it hard to hear me, let me be unequivocal. The world is waiting for you. You know who you are. You hear me. Now, the only question I've got as I leave this stage is, what are you going to do about it? Thank you, guys. I don't know if that opens up anything for questions. I don't know if anybody wants some clarity, but I'm open for any questions. Yes. What is my next step? My next step in the next 5 or 10 years, I will leave the silly dreams that I have to face. I wrote a book and I discovered something by taking risk, that I am a storyteller. So I am in the process of getting that made into a movie, and I am in the process of writing a screenplay. But next 5 years for sure, I will be coaching entrepreneurs. I will be talking about risk being the competitive advantage, and I will be helping people face their fears. The ripple effect is what's important at my age. Great question. Yes?
You define greatness for yourself?
For myself, man, you guys want to keep this personal. I love it. Thank you. What do I define greatness for myself? So when I was in that prison cell in solitary confinement, the epiphany that I had that mattered, that changed my whole life, is that for me, it's about humility. I want to do great things, and I want to give the glory to somebody else. I don't want to make this spiritual and all about God, but it's real. If I can remove myself from anything that I do great, then I would have done something great. Does that make sense? Thank you, my friend. You look really good. Love the tie. Yeah, you're welcome.
How much of your success do you contribute from it all, and moments where you felt like it was all was resource did you tap into to say to me?
Oh, I love this question. Nobody's ever asked it either, but I love it. This is not going to contradict what I just said to him, where it's all about humility and everything else, but I credit me for the resolve. I credit that moment where I had a decision to make, and it was either, am I going to live life, if anybody works at McDonald's, there's nothing against it, right? But am I going to live life working at McDonald's and mopping floors, or am I going to get up and I'm going to live up to what I know I'm capable of doing? So what I did is I put an image of where I thought I was supposed to be at a certain age in front of me at all times, and I worked towards it. And when I hit it, I built another image. And so the things that helped me the most, this is why I love this question. I come from a really small town where football was important, wrestling was important. And although my coaches, my teachers, the people that raised me were not even communicating with me, I had no idea where they were. I still used what they thought of me as a kid when they looked at me as the hierarchy of what I was trying to reach to be. If they thought I was special, right, then I owed it to them to become special. And so I played all those games with my mind when I was in those dark moments. And secondly, and it's not just because she's here, but it's Jen, my wife, who I met 4 months after walking out and believed in me the whole time. I had nothing, right? So it was a combination of all of those things. Now, you may not have that. That's fine. But I'm going to tell you that you owe it to somebody in this world to not quit. Maybe it's your mother. Maybe it's a coach. Maybe it's a professor now. Maybe it's you. I don't know. But there's somebody you owe it to. And the more you can get behind that, the more you're going to push yourself. Is it time? You got it, man. Guys, I really appreciate you listening to me. I hope some of it sinks in. Okay? Thanks.